Max Olson, theathletic.com, senior college football writer, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Max, I'm curious, who assigns stories for theathletic.com with about 300 billion of them in college athletics left and right almost daily?
Yeah, it's a team effort. That's for sure. That's why one of the things I love about my job is getting to work with a lot of sharp folks who cover this nationally and locally. And man, it's just I went out to Phoenix last week for the conference meetings that were going on, and I think that the thing that I tried to convey to administrators and coaches when you talk to them about all these issues is like, hey, we're kind of in the same boat as you guys. We're trying to just figure out where this is all going. We're trying to keep up too. It's been truly nonstop this offseason.
Max, what was the biggest thing you picked up from Phoenix last week?
Well, on the Big 12 side of it, not much action, obviously, in terms of figuring out where they're going with their setup for 23. It seems like they are, sitting back and waiting for this rule change to happen where they drop the regulations on having divisions to play conference title games. And at this point, I wouldn't be that surprised if the Big 12 tried to not have divisions for the next 2 years, at least for this 2-year period here, and just try to create first schedules and, do the best you can with it and continue to emphasize that, 1 versus 2 is your best path to your conference title game. And it certainly looks like other conferences are going to be going in that direction too. So they may be, kind of going with the tide there. But certainly the larger picture is just from talking to, those administrators and coaches who, everyone I think is really struggling with the issues right now. And I think that there are, people really kind of having to grasp that it's never going to be the same as it used to be. And that probably we're heading toward massive change in college athletics. And some of these issues, it'd be nice if there were like easy short-term fixes, but it doesn't really seem like there are that many assets.
Do you agree with Mike Bray, who said everybody just needs to shut up and stop complaining about NIL because it's not going anywhere?
I saw that was very popular, obviously, when people put that out there on Twitter. And to some extent, he's right. I mean, I think there are valid concerns about the direction this is all heading in, and what is the effect, and what is it going to mean for like the cultures and actual programs of college football teams and other sports, certainly. But yeah, I think Bray's saying, hey, we all make a lot of money. We've all got it pretty good. And, we need to, quit whining and get used to it. There's definitely some validity to that. And, I think in a lot of cases, when you talk to people who have real problems with where this is going, there are, valid points to be made, but there's also, I think, a lot of people that are just very uncomfortable, and this is just outside of their comfort zone of what they're used to in college athletics. And I think you're seeing that in some of the responses.
I received a text today, and again, the validity, the person who sent it would not just send me some crap, but he goes, Smokey, today I talked to an NIL attorney, a friend of mine. She helped draft the proposal for NIL legislation for at least one U.S. senator. Will Congress get involved? Her answer, yes, Congress will get involved. The FBS conference commissioners all but were begging us for help last week.
Yeah, I am not surprised by that. I mean, I think you've seen that at the highest level at Mark Emmert. Clearly they have been begging for intervention, and that's partly why we're living in this world we are now that's so unregulated, because they were hoping that the politicians would swoop in and set the rules for them, and that wasn't the case. And so yeah, now that I wouldn't be surprised if those folks are still angling for that and trying to appeal to a higher power to solve this problem for them. And like anything else, people want quick fixes to this stuff, but I don't know what that looks like or when, or if they're even going to be happy with the kind of resolutions that could come from that body.
Max, some of the different scheduling models have been discussed. The ACC seems pretty keen on once the deregulation of the divisions happens, the 3-5-5 model. What do you think about that one and what it could mean for the entertainment value of seeing new teams every year or every other year, and how that would work, especially in a 14 team like the ACC?
Yeah, I've had that conversation with folks in the Big 12. Is you do kind of wonder going forward here. Is it best to play 8 or 9 conference games? The argument for 8 being that you can maybe bring up some of your struggling programs a little more, maybe have more bowl teams overall. But of course, then you're going to have in a 12-team league, especially without divisions. You're not going to have round robin anymore. So there's going to be some teams you just don't get to play as often as you should. It's interesting. The ACC, it does seem like there's a lot of momentum there in making that switch, and I could see that being good for their conference. And I think that's something that probably the leadership in the Big 12 has been anticipating for a while, is that the other leagues seem to be heading in that direction. So why would we kind of go against the trend here by reinstating the division?
Max, so what's the latest on Jordan Addison on your end? I mean, where do we kind of sit? No, he was visiting Austin, and beyond that, it just seems kind of like everybody's sort of curious what's next.
Yeah, yesterday talked to some folks who suggested that there's been confidence on the Texas side that they could get it done with him. It looks like he's now going to go take an official visit to USC. I wouldn't be totally surprised if Alabama got involved as well. So I don't know that means it's over for Texas if he's going to go out and take a visit to USC, but certainly that can't make you feel very comfortable that if he's going to go spend a weekend out in LA, and it's going to be a really interesting battle. Now, the fascinating thing with Jordan Addison is who does he help more? I think he probably helps USC more, and I'm not saying that he wouldn't be incredibly valuable to Texas, but I'm not sure he makes them a few wins better. I'm not sure he makes them a Big 12 title team, in my opinion, because I think you've still got issues on the offensive line. I think you still are very improving at quarterback, and they've also added pieces at receiver this offseason. So I get wanting to pursue the best talent you can, but if he were to go there, I am curious how that would adjust the expectations for Texas. I'm not sure how much they should necessarily.
Yeah, he's obviously, it seemed like as valuable. You've been doing this transfer portal thing from day one and prior to that, as far as the rankings and who's the best available. And he does seem to be a tremendous talent, no question about it. Max,
can he play defense though?
No.
I mean, that would be helpful if he could play defense for Texas.
Can he
because
block?
That's the thing that.
Yeah,
I know.
Right.
Yeah, I know they've had.
I'm not knocking him. He's terrific. He's a first round player for sure. And if Texas, feels like that's that's something they can pull off, and I guess that would be a big deal to a lot of folks. But I think there's real questions about how you can build this offense that potentially has got all these studs, and maybe you can score 40 points a game, but I don't know. They might give up 38 points a game. It's going to be an interesting team if they just continue to sort of sell out on upgrading the offense.
Yeah, that's what's been interesting to me. I know they've had guys, like Marcus Washington jumped in the portal, and there's some other questions at wide receiver, but that's not a top concern for me for them. When you go and get a Jai Hall and you've got Worthy coming back and you bring in Billingsley at tight end, and yeah, I don't think that's the missing piece, like you said. Sticking with the Longhorns for a moment, Max, Chris Del Conte had his comments about the Longhorn Network. You've made a few appearances on there over the years, haven't you?
I used to work for ESPN.
Yes. So your thoughts on the Longhorn Network and Del Conte's comments? I don't think it comes as much of a surprise given the SEC network, but just your thoughts on, the perhaps end of an era for UT athletics.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in the room, so I don't want to maybe necessarily take what Del Conte said out of context. If there's some other context to it that isn't conveyed on Twitter, that happens sometimes. But
right.
When I saw that, I was disappointed. I've worked with a lot of really good people in that office at LHN. Obviously, LHN, was built up as being one thing before it even launched, and as this, big super weapon that everyone should be afraid of, and that, schools left the Big 12 over and all that, and that's not what it turned into. Part of that is because of Texas's failures in athletics. Part of that is just that. I mean, I think they do great work over there, and I understand why people don't have any love for the Longhorn Network. But when the day comes that Texas is going to the SEC, as Delconi said, they're going to shut down LHN and get folded into SEC Network. And you got to remember, there's a lot of hardworking people there in that office who are going to lose jobs or have to relocate or whatever, just because this big bet that Texas and ESPN made didn't work out, and that sucks for them. And I think you got to kind of remember the human element of that. As much as I'm sure you guys don't love LHN, there's some good folks over there who, to me, like, don't deserve that kind of commentary from Del Conte.
Well, and I got a feeling, talking to Jeff Howe, who covers UT for 247, that he thinks that they might remain in some ways there as kind of a bureau.
It's going to be a satellite.
For the satellite bureau for parts of the conference west of the Mississippi. Now, he said no one told him that. He just kind of has heard a little bit that could be the case. So maybe it's not just completely everybody's done, and there might be some, hopefully not just remnants. That's not the right word, but at least some who are there that can cover LSU, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, A&M, and of course, but not be associated with UT, because those schools aren't going to allow that to happen anyway.
Yeah, maybe so. I haven't talked to the folks I used to work with over there and asked what the future looks like there, and maybe there's some value to that. I mean, obviously, office space or a whole floor of an office in Austin, Texas, is not very cheap in terms of rent and stuff. So, for him to say, it's History Channel, to me suggests that they're sort of planning to fold up shop there. I guess we'll see what happens. Yeah, optimistically, it'd be great if they could sort of maintain that in some way. And it's fascinating. I mean, the legacy of Longhorn Network will be something that I'm sure people will write about someday, because, like I said, it was built up to be this thing that everyone should fear, and that's really not what it was. Now, was there also, it's a pretty incredible thing that happened and didn't really work out for ESPN, I wouldn't say. Was there an audience for a Big 12 network at the time? Should the Big 12 have set up a network like the Big 10 or the Pac-12 should have? Probably not in hindsight. I think probably the Big 12 ended up doing the right thing in terms of the third-tier rights. But, it'd be interesting to see how people remember LHN as a thing that everyone was afraid of. And it's not really what it ever became.
Would be a hell of a 30 for 30.
They never got to show those high school games. Remember, that was the big brouhaha.
Yeah, Connor Brewer and Jonathan Gray were going to be on there back in the day. That's right. That was the threat.
Yep. And then A&M was gone pretty much months later, I think, after they talked about that. But that never got off the ground. I did want to ask you, Gary Bohannon to USF. Max, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, surprised me. In talking to folks, maybe I wasn't talking to the right folks, but talking to folks, it does seem like the Missouri staff was really, really high on him and really trying to get him. And so, really impressive job by Jeff Scott to sell him on the vision there. USF has struggled in his first few years there to get things going, and they've had they've been kind of a revolving door at quarterback during that tenure. So awesome for Bohannon to go to a place where he can go in and I think be the guy, and I think that's going to be huge for their culture and their program. And I saw it when that came out last weekend, and you guys all saw it. Like, just the number of Baylor fans that were happy for him and supportive of him just speaks to not just the character, but everyone kind of understanding. Like, yeah, sometimes you don't love the way things go in the portal, but that's a good kid that deserves a place to start.
Thank you, Max. Max Olson with us Thursdays, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. We will